Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Teresa Kirkhart, Director of Professional and Business Development, and I welcome you to the last Latte and Learn of the year. This session's focused on Dementia Friends. Our guest speaker is George Worthington. George Worthington leads the Dementia Friendly Central Virginia initiative, which aims to help make our communities more welcoming and understanding of people living with dementia and their caregivers. George works as the Dementia Services Coordinator for Virginia's Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services, where he supports the Alzheimer's Disease and Related Disorders Commission. He drives the implementation of the Dementia State Plan, reviews existing programs, and works with other agencies to more effectively deliver services to Virginians living with dementia. A native of Charlottesville, George has a Master's of Science in Clinical Psychology from Latrobe. Did I say that correctly? Very good.
Yeah.
University in Melbourne, Australia. Okay, so we're going to turn it over to George. And George, can you go ahead and share your screen?
Sure. Hey, hopefully everybody can see that. Good morning. Thank you for coming to this Dementia Friends information session. I'm really excited to be able to share this with you. As leader of Dementia Friendly Central Virginia, I was up in Madison recently, and one of your members suggested doing this as we were talking about dementia friendly efforts. And of course, CAAR is a member of the Alliance, which is the grouping of organizations in Charlottesville that's helping move forward our age-friendly and dementia-friendly efforts. So really glad you're all here. Today's session is going to last about 60 minutes. Please feel free. It is relatively interactive, so I would encourage you to take your microphones off mute and chime in when I have some questions or thoughts for you to respond to. My role here today is just to share information about dementia and help raise awareness and reduce the stigma around it. I can't give you personal advice, so I may not be able to answer all of your questions, but I will point you to some resources and places where you can get any advice or support that you need. So after participating in today's session, you'll be able to describe dementia and know the most common type of dementia. You'll understand 5 key messages about dementia and also learn how to effectively communicate with a person living with dementia. And towards the end of the session, you'll be asked to choose a small action that you can take as part of becoming a dementia friend today. And that can be simply telling somebody something that you learned today. So before we get into it, I'd like you, when you hear the word dementia, what jumps into your mind? What do you think of when you hear dementia or Alzheimer's disease?
Memory loss?
Memory loss, great. Yeah. Any
Disability?
disability? Okay. Any others?
Confusion.
Confusion, great.
Supporting family members.
Supporting family members, great. I love that. So normally my next question is, are these words all positive or negative? But I would say that last one is very positive. What about the others? Confusion, memory loss, are they positive or negative?
More negative and intimidating or discouraging.
Yeah, more negative and discouraging. So, and that's unfortunately, what we typically think of when we think of dementia. We think of the downside, the loss. But I'm so glad somebody mentioned it's also a time of supporting family. So thanks for that. So dementia itself is not a specific, so there is a workbook. If you would like the workbook, I'm going to pop my email address in the chat, and there's also a certificate. So if you'd like the certificate, please feel free to email me and I'll get those to you. Just in the chat. And okay. So dementia itself is not a specific disease. It's an overall term that describes a wide range of symptoms like memory loss or confusion that are associated with a decline in memory or other thinking skills that are severe enough to reduce a person's ability to do everyday activities. So Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia, and you can see here it's the big circle. It's responsible for about 60 to 80% of all dementias. And other types of dementia include dementia with Lewy bodies, frontotemporal dementia, and vascular dementia. So I'm not going to go into those in great detail. I will talk about the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's disease, but just be aware that these other diseases have their own symptom clusters that can vary from Alzheimer's disease. And also many people have symptoms of more than one type of dementia. So they might have Alzheimer's disease with vascular issues as well. So the goal of this program, as I said, is to increase understanding about dementia and reduce the stigma around it. Dementia Friends is a global movement. It was developed by the Alzheimer's Society in the United Kingdom, and we started it in the US in 2015 and in Virginia in 2018. The goal is to help everybody in a community understand 5 key messages about dementia, how it affects people, and how we can each make a difference in the lives of people living with the disease. People with dementia need to be understood and supported in their communities, and you can help by becoming a dementia friend. So most people know that we experience physical changes as we get older. We may wear glasses, we may have graying hair, we may have lost our hair. We may feel a bit stiff when we get up in the morning, but we also experience changes to our thinking or cognitive skills as we get older. We may find that we don't remember names as easily or that we have more trouble concentrating in busy settings. So if you have the workbook, page 3 has the 10 signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's disease and also a description of typical age-related changes. Whoops. Sorry, I'm working with 2 mice, and so I keep forgetting which one to use. So there are 10 early warning signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. And the first sign is memory loss that disrupts daily life. And that's the first word that came up this morning when I asked you what comes to mind when you think of dementia: memory loss. So one of the most common signs of Alzheimer's disease is memory loss, especially forgetting recently learned information. Others include forgetting important dates or events, asking for the same information over and over, relying on memory aids like friends or Post-it notes or your phone for things that they used to handle without any assistance. And with normal aging, we might forget somebody's name or an appointment, but you usually remember them later, typically just as the person is maybe walking away or after the appointment's already finished. But you do typically remember that you've forgotten something. The second sign is challenges in planning or solving problems. Some people may experience changes in their ability to develop and follow a plan or work with numbers. They may have trouble following a familiar recipe or keeping track of monthly bills. And they may have difficulty concentrating and take much longer to do things than they did before. With normal aging, we might make a mistake when balancing a checkbook, if you're still using a checkbook, but you can quickly work out that you've made a mistake and go back and fix it. If somebody with Alzheimer's were trying to do that, they might not really understand what they were trying to do in the first place, let alone catch a mistake in their arithmetic. The third sign is difficulty completing familiar tasks at home, at work, or at leisure. People with Alzheimer's disease often find it hard to complete daily tasks. Sometimes people may have trouble driving to a familiar location, managing a budget at work, or remembering the rules of a favorite game. And with normal aging, we might need help to use the settings on a microwave or record a TV show, but you know what to do. You find a 12-year-old or a teenager to do it for you. But somebody with Alzheimer's disease might not make that connection to ask somebody for help. They might keep trying and failing to do it on their own. The fourth sign is confusion with time or place. People with Alzheimer's disease can lose track of dates, seasons, and the passage of time. They may have trouble understanding something if it's not happening right there, right in front of them. And sometimes they may forget where they are or even how they got there. And you can imagine that must be pretty terrifying. And with normal aging, we might get confused about what day of the week it is, never on Friday though, but we usually recall it later. Uh, and we know where to look for it. So you'd look at a calendar or you'd ask somebody or you'd look at your phone. Somebody with Alzheimer's disease would maybe not make that connection to ask for help. And the fifth sign is trouble understanding visual relationships, visual images and spatial relationships. So for some people, having vision problems is a sign of Alzheimer's disease. And this is something we don't really associate with Alzheimer's, but it's certainly a symptom. People may have difficulty reading or judging distance, determining color or contrast, and this can cause problems with things like driving and walking. With normal aging, we might have vision changes that are related to things like cataracts or other changes in your eyes, but those are things that are happening in your eyes, whereas the changes with Alzheimer's disease are happening in your brain. The sixth sign is new problems with words in speaking or writing. People with Alzheimer's disease may have trouble following or joining a conversation. They may stop in the middle of speaking and have no idea how to continue, or they may repeat themselves. They may struggle with vocabulary. They may have trouble finding the right word, or they may call things by the wrong name. For example, let me just check the time on my hand clock here. So we understand that, but it's not the right word. And with normal aging, we may have trouble finding the right word, that tip of the tongue syndrome, but usually that might be stress related. As soon as the stress goes away and you stop thinking about it, you'll remember the word you were trying to remember. And with Alzheimer's disease, you probably wouldn't end up remembering that word. The seventh sign is misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace your steps. People with Alzheimer's disease can put things in unusual places. After making coffee, somebody might put the coffee back in the refrigerator and the milk in the cupboard. So they've got the right idea, but they just can't quite get it successfully. They may lose things and be unable to go back over their steps to find them again. And as a result, they may accuse other people of stealing from them. And this can happen more frequently over time. With normal aging, we might lose things from time to time, like glasses, car keys, phone, remote control, all those things. But we normally can remember where we were the last time we had them and go back and either find it or remember what we did after that and eventually find it. Somebody with Alzheimer's disease would find that very difficult, if not impossible to do. The eighth sign is decreased or poor judgment. People with Alzheimer's disease can experience changes in judgment or decision making. They may use poor judgment when dealing with money. So they might give large amounts of money to telemarketers, any number that pops up on the TV screen. They may call and order things that they don't need. And they may also pay less attention to grooming or keeping themselves clean. And with normal aging, we might make a bad decision once in a while, but you usually realize pretty quickly that, or maybe even after a while, that this was maybe not the best decision to make. And the next time you're in a similar situation, you'll do it differently. Somebody with Alzheimer's disease probably wouldn't recognize that they made a bad decision and would probably keep doing the same thing over and over. And with all of these, I just want you to be aware that what we're looking for is not one-offs. So if somebody forgets your name one day, that doesn't necessarily mean they have dementia. But if if you notice it frequently, it's happening more and more, and it's a change from how the person was before, then it might be the sign or symptom of something more serious, and you should maybe encourage the person to talk to their doctor about it. For me, I'm terrible with names. It takes me 4 or 5 times meeting somebody before I really remember somebody's name. And so for me, forgetting somebody's name is not going to be a sign of something more serious, because that's how I am already. But if it's a change from how they were before and you're noticing a pattern of change, that's maybe time to think about checking in with your healthcare professional. The ninth sign is withdrawal from work or social activities. Somebody with Alzheimer's disease may remove themselves from hobbies or social activities, work projects, or sports. They may have trouble keeping up with a favorite sports team or remembering how to complete a favorite hobby. And they may also avoid being social because of the changes that they're experiencing. And this is really unfortunate, because we know that social engagement, so being with other people, having conversations, interacting, those are protective for your cognitive health. So it's really important that we maintain that social engagement. And especially if somebody's already experiencing some changes, it may help slow those changes in the future. The 10th sign is changes in mood and personality. The mood and personalities of people with Alzheimer's can change. They can become confused, suspicious, depressed, fearful, or anxious. And they may be easily upset at home, at work, or really anywhere where they're out of their comfort zone. With normal aging, we might develop very specific ways of doing things and get a little upset if our routine is disrupted, but it's not going to be the end of the world. Whereas for somebody with Alzheimer's disease, routine is very important, and so disrupting that can be problematic. Any questions about the 10 signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's? Or move on? Okay. All right, so we're going to do this little activity together. This is, we'll introduce you to the 5 key messages of the Dementia Friends program. So we're going to match the sentences in column 1 to the phrases in column 2 to get complete sentences. So for number 1, dementia is not. Could somebody finish that for me?
B.
Yes, dementia is not a normal part of aging. Correct. B. So not everybody who grows old will develop dementia. This is our first key message. What do we mean by this? Anybody have any thoughts? So one of the myths around dementia is that it's just a normal part of aging, and that everybody who gets old will eventually develop dementia, but that's not true. So while age is the biggest risk factor for dementia, not everybody who's getting older will develop dementia. While we all experience some changes as we get older, with dementia, it's much more profound. So memory loss will be much more noticeable than somebody who's aging normally. And it could be accompanied by things like mood changes and confusion. And we want to make sure that if people do experience these changes, that they do talk to their doctor, because some of the conditions that cause the symptoms of dementia are treatable and reversible, like a vitamin deficiency or delirium. So very important to get it checked out. Number 2, dementia is caused by, anybody?
A.
Yes, diseases of the brain. So dementia is caused by diseases of the brain. This is our second key message. The most common of these is Alzheimer's disease. So can anyone tell me the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease?
I can give you an example. So if somebody has their coffee and they're thinking they're putting sugar in, but they're putting salt in and they don't recognize the difference.
What's that then? Is that
I think that's Alzheimer's.
okay? Anybody else have any thoughts? So dementia, we want you to think about it as an umbrella term. So dementia describes those symptoms, the 10 warning signs, those symptoms. And Alzheimer's disease and other diseases like vascular dementia or um, the vitamin deficiency cause those symptoms. So it's the umbrella term in Alzheimer's disease, frontotemporal dementia. Those other dementias are the causes of those symptoms. Number 3, dementia is not just. Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
E.
Yes. Okay. Dementia is not just about having memory problems. This is our third key message. So while we often think of dementia as a form of memory loss, and indeed that was the first word that popped up at the beginning, it's much more than that. And while memory loss may be one of the first signs or symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, it may not necessarily be a prominent early symptom of some of those other dementias. And dementia generally makes it harder to plan and learn new activities. It interferes with structured tasks like writing or driving, and it can make it harder to communicate. But there's much that can be done to help. And every year we learn more and more about how best to support people living with dementia, how we can maintain their confidence and independence for as long as possible. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Number 4, it's possible to have C, yes, a good quality of life with dementia. So this is our 4th key message. And most of us have an image in our mind of what life with dementia looks like. And that's usually pretty bleak. So this might be a surprising concept. But many people with dementia, and particularly in the earlier stages of the disease, continue to drive and socialize. They may still be working. And as dementia progresses, many people still lead active, healthy lives. They're able to continue their hobbies and enjoy loving friendships and relationships. Of course, dementia makes it harder to do these things, but with the right support and know-how, it's still possible for somebody with dementia to get the very best out of life. Number 5, there's more to the person than. D, yes, okay, thanks. There's more to the person than the dementia. People with dementia are a valuable part of the community. This is our 5th key message. So in the same way that we would look at somebody who has diabetes or cancer and think of them as a person who happens to have that disease, diabetes or cancer, we want to think about people with dementia as people first, somebody who happens to have a disease that's causing those symptoms of dementia. And remember that dementia can have an impact on a whole family, not just the person who has the disease. And so at the end of today's session, I'm going to ask you to think about what you can do differently in your day-to-day life that may help people affected by dementia. And as I said, that might be simply telling somebody something you learned today, but it might be if you know somebody who's looking after somebody living with dementia or who has dementia, maybe offering to bring them a meal or just to sit with the person with dementia for a while to give the caregiver a bit of a break. Okay. Any questions about the 5 key messages? Okay. So I'm going to read you just a short little story that should help you understand a bit more about what it might be like to live with dementia. And as noted before, dementia is caused by diseases that damage brain cells. The damage interferes with how brain cells communicate with each other. And when they can't communicate, a person's thinking and behavior and feelings can all be affected. The brain has many different areas, and each one is responsible for different functions, for example, memory or judgment or movement. So when cells in one area of the brain are damaged, that area can't function efficiently. And sometimes the brain is able to make up for that by using another part of itself, but not always. So the following story is a good way to illustrate how dementia might affect a person. It's not a scientific explanation, but everyone's brain is affected differently by dementia. For right now, let's imagine a 70-year-old woman who has dementia. Now imagine there's a full bookcase beside her, and each book inside the bookcase represents one of her skills or memories. On the top shelves are her memories of facts and her skill for thinking in complex or complicated ways. For people with dementia, the top or outer part of the brain is damaged first. Skills like math, using language, keeping one's behavior in check are in this part of the brain, up in the front and the top. In our bookcase story, these skills are also books on the top shelves. When dementia rocks the woman's bookcase, the books on the top shelf begin to fall out. The woman may not remember what she ate for breakfast, or that she has to pay for items at the drugstore, or even that somebody came to visit her this morning. Emotions and feelings are lower down within the bookcase, just like they are in the lower or inner part of the brain. This is the instinct area of the brain. Feelings like love, happiness, frustration, and sensing respect live here. As dementia continues to rock her bookcase, the books on these lower shelves will stay for a much longer time. The bookcase story helps explain different thinking skills and memories and the effects of dementia. So facts and complex thinking fall away quickly. Emotions and feelings will remain for much longer. So let's return to the 70-year-old woman with dementia for a real-life example of the bookcase story. Her daughter may visit to find that her mother can no longer remember her name, but she will, however, remember the feelings of love, comfort, and support that came from her daughter's visit. But if they were to argue, the mother might not remember the details of that argument, but she will remember the feelings of anger and hurt that come from that exchange. So the next time the daughter comes to visit, her mother may just see somebody that she knows left her feeling bad. And so as her dementia continues, the woman might lose other thinking skills. She may no longer be able to manage her finances, complete activities she once loved to do, or even communicate with family and friends. But dementia affects each person differently. And remember that dementia also affects the factual and emotional parts of the brain differently. The top part that manages facts like names, dates, faces, and places is affected first. The facts are easily forgotten. The lower part that manages emotions is affected later, so feelings and emotions aren't lost as quickly as facts. The brain stores both recent and past memories as well. And for people with dementia, the most recent memories are lost first. Memories from earlier in life that have been reviewed over and over and thought of, fondly, typically things that have lots of emotion attached, like big events in your life, these are remembered for much, much longer. And other thinking skills are also affected by dementia, including planning, judgment, and communication. So planning is the skill that we use to carry out everyday activities. Things like cooking or mowing the lawn, all of these require planning. Judgment is the skill that we use to keep ourselves safe or to interact with other people. Again, the person with dementia might give large amounts of money to anybody who calls, or they may criticize somebody loudly in a social setting. Again, remember that if the person has always done something like this, then it may not be dementia, but if you're seeing a change from how the person was before, then it might be something to take more seriously. So in a couple of minutes, we'll talk a bit more about communication. But first, I want you to have a look at this healthy brain side by side with a brain with advanced Alzheimer's. What do you see? What are the differences between the two?
Anything more gappage?
More gaps, yeah. So it's shrunk and it's got more gaps and holes. And anybody know why that is? Why is it so much smaller? So as the disease works its way through the brain and kills neurons, they don't regenerate. So they get flushed out of the brain and the volume shrinks over time. But you can see it's pretty severe, or it can be very severe. And I'll also just point out down here, hopefully you can see my cursor, but down at the bottom, you have this kind of shaded dark area in the brain with advanced Alzheimer's, and there's a structure in the healthy brain. And that structure is the hippocampus, which is a small part of the brain that is the most associated part of the brain with learning and memory. And you can see that it's completely gone in that brain with advanced Alzheimer's. So that means not only does the person not remember what they had for breakfast this morning, they were never able to make a memory of it in the first place. But that's, much further along in the disease process. People in the early stages should still be able to form new memories, maybe just not as well, or they may have trouble recalling them later as someone without Alzheimer's disease. Okay, so we're going to do just a little exercise together. We're going to come up with a list of step-by-step instructions of how to brush your teeth. So this is an example of planning an activity. So planning is the skill that we use to carry out everyday activities. So what we'd like to do is have a list that if somebody had never brushed their teeth before, they'd be able to read our list and work out what to do successfully. So what do you think the first step would be to brushing your teeth?
Picking up the toothbrush.
Picking up the toothbrush, great. Can anybody think of something that might come before that?
A
Go to the
reminder,
bathroom.
Sorry, I heard going to the bathroom.
and setting in a reminder, possibly.
Okay, setting a reminder. So that would be a cue to maybe remind somebody to brush their teeth. But yeah, going to the bathroom. At some point before that, you will have made a decision at some level to brush your teeth. So that's kind of the first step to any kind of activity, is deciding that we're going to do it. So let's say we're standing in front of the mirror with a toothbrush, and what we've picked up our toothbrush. What would be the next step?
Get your toothpaste.
Get your toothpaste. So I might pick up my toothpaste with my other hand, and now what do I do?
Put the toothpaste on the brush.
Okay, can somebody think of something that might
Take
come?
off the top of the toothpaste.
There we go. Yes, so you got to take the top off. You have to put your toothbrush down while you do that if you're not too dexterous. And then you're going to need to know, you have to know where to put the toothpaste, right? So you need to move the bristle end of the toothbrush close to the toothpaste and then squeeze. What are we seeing here? Is this I mean, we think of brushing our teeth as a really simple activity, but what are we seeing?
A lot of little steps involved.
There's a lot of little steps involved. Absolutely. So when I do this with people in person and they're actually writing down their lists, the longest list I usually get is about maybe 15 steps, and we're still able to find things that are left out. And the longest list I've seen was about 100 steps. So it's a very complex activity, even though it seems pretty simple. And it's something that we do without thinking. So the point of this is that if you said to somebody with dementia, it's time to brush your teeth now, go brush your teeth, and they look at you a little blankly, it might be because they don't understand what you're saying, but it could also be that they just don't know where to start, because they can see that there's all these things. They know that there's lots involved, but they're not quite sure how to begin that activity. So depending on the stage of the disease process, there are ways that we can support somebody to be successful in doing activities like brushing your teeth. So for somebody in the earliest stages, my mother-in-law had Alzheimer's disease. And when I went to her house for the first time, she had Post-it notes all over the house telling what was in the cupboards and drawers. And there were also some kind of simple instructions by the bathroom mirror for her. So you could write down a few, maybe 3 or 4 steps to brushing your teeth, remember the toothpaste or something like that, and the person might be successful in completing the task. But as the disease progresses, you might need a little more assistance. So they might lose their reading skills and they might need pictures to show them what to do. They might need you to go into the bathroom and mirror the activity so that they can follow along and do it successfully. At some point, unfortunately, with Alzheimer's disease, you'll probably have to brush their teeth for them because they'll simply won't be able to do that any longer. But you can see that there are ways of supporting folks that stop before doing everything for them. For many people providing care for a loved one, you want to do it all because you want to make sure that you're providing the best care possible. But we also want to make sure that the person is able to retain some sense of accomplishment and effectiveness. Okay, so we're going to talk about communication now. Communication is really a basic human need. So one of the reasons our brains are so large relative to our body size is that we have to navigate complex social interactions. And we do that by communicating. And that can be verbal communication, it can be written down, it can be body language. There are lots of ways that we communicate what we're feeling and thinking to other people. And it's communication with somebody with dementia, on the other hand, requires a bit more patience and understanding and also good listening skills. So when we talked about the bookcase story, we talked about how a person might feel as the changes with dementia continue to affect thinking. And one of the skills that can be greatly changed is the ability to communicate, both expressing needs and understanding what other people are asking. As we talk about communication, keep in mind how the person might feel. So changes in the ability to communicate, they're unique to each person with Alzheimer's disease, but there are some things that you see pretty often. And these can include things like using familiar words repeatedly, inventing new words to describe familiar objects, like that hand clock for a watch, easily losing your train of thought, reverting to a first or birth language, or having difficulty organizing words logically. I think the reverting to a birth language is pretty interesting. So if somebody moved to this country from a country where they speak a different language and learns English, speaks English for 60 years, and then they get Alzheimer's disease, they may start forgetting their English first because it's more recent and only being able to communicate in their first language, which of course can make it pretty hard to find somebody to provide care. Even as the disease progresses, ongoing communication is important for people with dementia. You might notice that the person becomes more easily confused. They might not respond to what you're saying or asking, or they may respond by pushing you away, or maybe by crying, or maybe they respond by just making some noises. Sometimes we call this type of response a behavior, but often it's really just a form of communication. So for me, a couple of years ago, I had some shoulder issues. If I had been in an assisted living and someone were trying to get me dressed and push my arms up to put a shirt on, if I couldn't tell them that it hurt when they did that, I might just push that person away. Now, am I being aggressive, or am I trying to communicate that that hurts, that I'm in pain? So I want you to think about that as communication as behavior as a form of communication. If somebody's in a room or in a space where it's very busy, people are moving around, there's lots of chit chats and it's noisy. If they can't tell you that all of this is a little overwhelming for them and they'd like to be somewhere else, they might just burst into tears. But is that sadness, or is it just trying to tell you that they're a little overwhelmed by where they are? So thinking about behaviors as communication is a really important thing that we can do with people with dementia. It helps us interpret things correctly, and also can diffuse situations that could otherwise escalate. So we want to use these tips when communicating with somebody with dementia. First and foremost, you want to treat the person with dignity and respect. Remember that key message about there's more to the person than the dementia. So remembering that that person is still that person, and they need to be treated like we would want to be treated ourselves. Be aware of your own feelings. So your tone of voice and your stance, your body language, all communicate your attitude. So use positive, friendly facial expressions, smile, uh, have your arms out rather than folded. All of these things are encouraging and welcoming. Be patient and supportive. Let the person know that you're listening and trying to understand. Show that you care about what they're saying, and be careful not to interrupt. People with dementia can have difficulty communicating if we move or talk too quickly. It can take somebody up to 20 seconds to take in what you've said and get out their response. So here's how long that is. Mr. Jones, would you like to wear the red shirt or the blue shirt today? I think I'd like to wear the blue shirt. So that was just 20 seconds, but how did it feel?
Really long.
Yeah, much
Really
longer.
long. And it would probably have felt really uncomfortable if we were all in a room together and I'm making eye contact with you throughout. But somebody with dementia can take even longer to respond. And think about what's going on. You have to understand, you have to hear first what the person has said. You have to understand it. You have to think of a response. You have to then make the words come out of your mouth. So there's a lot that's going on. And if somebody's having trouble with any one of those areas, it can push out the time. It's also about 100 times slower than we would normally expect somebody to respond. It usually takes about a fifth of a second to respond to somebody, which is amazingly quick. So that just is an example of how you might need to be more patient and allow more time for somebody with dementia to communicate. And if somebody's having trouble communicating, you can offer comfort and reassurance. I'm listening. It's okay. Please continue. Avoid criticizing or correcting. So instead of telling the person it's no, that's not true, just go along with it. Unless you're causing some sort of injury or it's making the person unhappy, when you might want to change the subject, then go along with what they're saying. If they think that their mother is still coming to pick them up, and yet their mother died, many years ago, rather than saying, "Oh, don't you remember your mother died?" Maybe ask the person what her mother was like. And I see you're worried. Well, what's she like? What does she normally pick you up at this time, or anything? What does she talk about with you, or what does she like to wear? What does she like to do? Just to kind of move the conversation on and get it, and not try and reorient the person to your reality. You can offer a guess as to what they're trying to say. And if you we can get meaning sometimes from how the sentence flows, how the words are flowing, the tone, the volume. So you may not actually need the exact word to get a general understanding of what the person's trying to say. And you can also encourage nonverbal communication, like pointing to where it hurts or pointing to what you need. Other good conversation tips for somebody with dementia are, if you're coming up to somebody with dementia, make sure you come from the front. So think about, we talked about the vision changes that can occur with Alzheimer's disease. And one of those is losing peripheral vision. So that I've seen this illustrated as eventually your field of vision closes in on you, and later in the disease, you have really binocular vision. You can only focus on a small part of the scene in front of you. And so as people lose their peripheral vision, if you come up beside them or behind them and tap them on the shoulder, that's going to come from nowhere for them, and it's likely to startle them. So come from the front, say your name, maintain eye contact. If the person's sitting down, maybe get on your knee or sit down next to them. Call the person by their preferred name. So maybe instead of honey or sir, you might call them John. Something that they're going to remember that's associated with themselves. So back to my mother-in-law, one of the post-it notes in the bathroom was a name, and it said Mrs. C.D. Mowat. So her name was Leslie, and she probably thought of herself most as Leslie. So seeing Mrs. C.D. Mowat, that might not have meant very much to her. It was a great effort on my father-in-law's behalf, but it may not have been that helpful for her. So use people's preferred names, use short, simple phrases. If somebody looks like they're not understanding you, try and say it in a different way, try to use simpler words. All of these can be helpful. Speak slowly and clearly, use a gentle and relaxed tone, and give the person some time, be patient to let them get out what they'd like to say. And then during the conversation, there are several strategies that you can use to keep the conversation flowing and maybe not ending up in a place that might cause distress. So one thing you can do to make things easier is provide a statement rather than ask a question. So instead of saying, would you like to go to lunch now? So you can say, we're going to lunch now. And then, help the person towards the table. Instead of saying, do you need to use the bathroom? You can say, the bathroom's right here. Avoid confusing and vague statements about something you want them to do. So instead of saying, please come here, your shower's ready. You want to say something like, please come here, your shower is ready. Rather than saying, come over here, it's ready now. So they might not understand what you're trying to say. So be concrete. Turn negatives into positives. So instead of saying, don't go there, say, let's go here. People with dementia here know a lot. And so if you're able to reduce that, the number of times they're hearing no by turning those negatives into positive, that's great. You can also give visual cues, so pointing or touching the item that you want the person to use, or you can start the task for them and encourage them to keep going. So for example, using a fork at mealtime. If they're having trouble working out what to do with it, you can show them what to do and they can continue. Also avoid quizzing people with dementia. I see this a lot. The family members really want the person to hold on to a memory, say of a wedding or something. And so they'll show the person that picture over and over and quiz them about who's in it and what was going on. And that can be extremely frustrating for the person with dementia. Imagine if somebody were asking you those questions and you simply have no idea what they're talking about. But you realize that you're expected to know. They'll get that. So they'll feel a little ashamed and embarrassed that they can't tell you what's in the picture because clearly they should be able to because you're telling them that they should be able to. So instead, you can reminisce, show them pictures, ask them who's in the picture. If they say it's somebody completely different, go along with it. It doesn't really hurt anybody, and it's going to keep the person. It's going to keep the conversation from degenerating into an argument. And you can also use written notes for pictures as reminders. So that there's post-it notes on drawers and cupboards to help the person navigate. So. Okay, any questions about the conversation, tips, strategies, communication strategies? Oh, okay, so I'm just going to review the 5 key messages for you. So dementia is not a normal part of aging. Dementia is caused by diseases of the brain. Dementia is not just about having memory problems. It's possible to have a good quality of life with dementia. And there's more to the person than the dementia. So we're going to take all of what we learned today and put it into action, or I'm going to encourage you to. So here are some things that you can do as part of becoming a dementia friend today. You can get in touch and stay in touch with someone that you know who's living with dementia. Remember, there's a new documentary that's going to be shown on VPM, our public television, it might be in next week or the week after, called Living Well with Dementia. And the families in that film, which premiered here in Charlottesville at the film festival a couple of weeks ago, they were talking about how their friends just disappeared. And that's a story I often hear with people with dementia. Their friends don't know how to relate any longer. He's got dementia. Gosh, can't do anything with him. And so their social circle just becomes almost invisible. It just disappears. And that's a real shame. And as I said at the beginning, we know that social engagement is really important for people with dementia. So if you can help somebody maintain that social engagement, that's really great. You can maybe volunteer for Dementia Friendly Central Virginia or another organization that helps people with dementia. You can encourage your friends to become dementia friends. We have virtual sessions regularly in Virginia. You can volunteer to participate in a clinical trial. So that's a bit of a bigger action, but clinical trials need healthy people too. So if you are interested in research, you can get in touch with Trial Match at the Alzheimer's Association, can help you find trials. And here are some other things as well. One thing I encourage people to do, if you have Medicare and you're getting your annual wellness visit, you should, as part of that, get a cognitive screen. And so if your doctor hasn't done one, you can encourage him to give you one, and that way you get a baseline. So it's much easier to see if there's any changes. So those are all great things that you can do. Finally, I just want to share some resources that are available. The Alzheimer's Association is a great source of information. Their website has tons of information about Alzheimer's disease, as well as the other types of dementia. So the actual name of the Alzheimer's Association is the Alzheimer's Disease and Related Disorders Association. So they do cover frontotemporal dementia, vascular dementia, and Lewy body dementia, and these other forms. So their 24/7 helpline is a number you can call and get information about local programs, or you can get some help if you're looking after a loved one with dementia and you're struggling a bit with something. You can call the helpline, and they have trained social workers who can help you problem solve what to do. Your local area agency on aging, apologies, it should be JABA here in Charlottesville, Albemarle. So JABA is the local area agency on aging, providing lots of services for folks as we get older. But also they do have some dementia-specific programs that are especially helpful for people living with dementia. Dementia Capable Virginia, that's our state supported web page currently on the DARS website. It has lots of great resources. You can download things like the Virginia Dementia Roadmap, which goes stage by stage through the disease and talks about things you might expect and things you can do, and also presents quite concrete action steps that you should think about taking, like making sure your advanced care planning is in place, or your power of attorneys, things like that. DARS generally, so we have a dementia page as well. That's things like the Dementia State Plan, if you're interested in other information about dementia policy and services at the state level. And then finally, Virginia Navigator. This is a website that connects people to over 26,000, I think, supports and services across the state. So you can put in what you're looking for in your zip code, and up will pop services in our area. So that's all I have for you today. I know we've got a few questions left. Here's the certificate. If anybody would like a copy of the certificate with your name, please email me. Again, my email's in the chat. So I'm happy to, I think we've got 5 minutes for some questions.
Anyone have any questions?
So what can we do preventatively to help avoid dementia?
What a great question. Thank you. So there's a lot we can do. We have learned so much in the past few years about brain health and dementia prevention. It's really incredible. So the obvious thing, my one key message there is what's good for your heart is good for your brain. So anything that you could do that can help your heart function better. So that might be controlling high blood pressure, controlling high cholesterol, controlling diabetes. All of those are modifiable risk factors for dementia. So high blood pressure has quite a strong link to dementia. Avoiding brain injuries, so avoiding falls. If you ride a bicycle, maybe wear a helmet, because brain injury is, even a moderate brain injury can raise your risks of developing dementia by more than 2 times. Getting enough sleep, reducing stress, getting exercise. Regular exercise is really protective of your cognitive health. Challenging your brain. So reading, going to classes, playing strategic games like chess or bridge, all of these are good. And doing crosswords, these are good things that challenge your brain. They can foster new connections between neurons, and that helps your brain retain its plasticity and helps keep it functioning better. There's a website on the Department of Health. It's called Healthy Brain Virginia. If you do a search for Healthy Brain Virginia, it should pop up. And there's some good tips and strategies for helping improve your brain health there as well. Yeah, great
George,
question.
you also had some good handouts. So anyone, yesterday I did send those that had registered before I sent out the email. You would have got links to the handouts. And there was some good information in there. For those of you that registered after I sent that, if you want to scan this with your phone, just take a picture, put it up there, and it will automatically come up with a link for you.
Yeah, there's a sheet that has the 10 warning signs and also 10 tips for a healthy brain on it. So,
Yep, good information. Anybody else have any questions?
How do genetics or hereditary factors play a role?
yeah, another great question. So what we think now is that about 65% of dementia risks are, sorry, 55% of dementia risk is not modifiable. So those are things like genetics and age. And the other 45% of dementia risk falls into that potentially modifiable category that I've just been talking about, like exercise and heart health. But genetics, so if you have a first-degree relative who's had Alzheimer's disease, then your risks of developing Alzheimer's are slightly higher than the person who doesn't. It's not but exactly how much higher is your risk, we can't really determine because that's too individual. But it's not determinative. So if you got a genetic test and you had there's one gene, the APOE4 gene, that's highly associated with Alzheimer's disease pathology, so the plaques and tangles that cause the disease or are associated with the disease, that if you have 2 copies of that gene, again, your risks of developing dementia are higher, but it doesn't mean you're going to get it. So there is a genetic component to Alzheimer's disease, but it varies, how important it is varies by individual.
Thank you very much. This has been wonderful.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
No, just thank you for your time.
Great.
Thanks for your time too. I appreciate you all being
Thank you
here.
so much, George,
Yeah,
for
thank
bringing this.
you.
You, George.
Okay.
Thank
Have a good
you.
day.
Yes. So I have
too.
some slides that I want to go over with you guys real quick. We have, it's the end of the year. And also I had told Stephanie, I believe it was, or either Meredith, all of our Latte and Learns are recorded and they are put on CAR's YouTube channel. So you can find the information, you can find these recordings. We also, on Monday, will have this recording put out with the handouts. So if you missed it, or if you want to share it with someone, it will be in that newsletter. So we have some upcoming things that's going to be happening. Our broker forum is coming up on the 20th. And we also have a class after the broker forum on tax minimization for realtors. If you're not a broker, you can still attend this class. You can still register for it. So this is good information. Tax time's coming, guys. I know I hate to say that, but it is coming. So this might be some really good information for you. And then yesterday, they talked about the angel tree at our general membership meeting. Please take a moment to stop in and grab one of the angels off the tree. You know, I do this from afar. As most of you know, I live in Texas and I work remotely with Car. So I have to do all mine through Amazon and sending. It can be done. But just to make some child's Christmas more special, because they received a lot more gifts than what they would have received. And just going through the Salvation Army. So we do this yearly from our YPN group. So this is something that's really enjoyable. If you haven't participated, let this be the first year that you do participate, because you'll definitely get it. It's just a good feeling to be able to, provide something to someone like that. For those of you that have not completed your code of ethics, now, if you have not received an email from us that said, we do not have this information from you, then don't worry about it. That means you've already done it. But majority of the people that take any of the code of ethics or any of your classes, CE classes outside of CAR, we will not have that information. The online providers do not send us a copy of your certificate. That's left up to you to send that copy so that we have it. And also the association, the local associations are the only ones that can upload to NAR. The online providers do not have that capability. We have the database that is married up with NAR that can do that. So if you haven't done that, which I'm sure you've already done it, because guys, you do your 16 hours and your 24 hours. It's just whether or not you took it with a good provider. Mosley Flint, the CE shop, and McKissick. Those are the ones that we're accepting. But if you haven't, if you know someone that is getting these reminders, we're having 2 classes, Monday, December the 2nd, and Tuesday, December the 3rd. Those are the last classes of the year. And we would like to try to get all of this taken care of by the 15th of December. With the holidays approaching, a lot of cars going to be closed for several days, and people are taking holiday vacation. So we just want to make sure that we get everything in there before the 31st.
Thank you, Teresa.
December's general membership meeting is our installation. That's coming up on Thursday, December the 5th. If you haven't registered, please go ahead and register for that so that we can help Josh have a wonderful time. If you are in the need of your continuing education, the first of the year, remember the course outlines, well, not really the course outlines, but the credit outlines, I should say, have changed. In the past, you've been taking 1 hour of legal, 1 hour of contracts, and 1 hour of agency. They now have changed to 2 hours. So we are starting in January with that setup. They are telling us at DPOR, do not send any more classes for those particular topics in 1 hour to get approved. So they're not even accepting 1 hours anymore. But if you're in the middle of your renewal and you don't have to renew until, let's say, June, you still have to take that 1 hour. But be reminded that anytime you take more hours than what is allowed, they go to real estate related. So if you're still in the middle of that cycle and you only need 1 hour of legal updates, well, if you take our 2 hours of legal updates, they'll show up as 2 hours, but one of those hours can be used toward the real estate related. Now, the real estate related has decreased. It was 8 hours of that. Now it's decreased to 5. So that helps us out too. And as a reminder, if you can't meet the January date, we have these classes in April, July, and October. So 4 times a year, they're quarterly that we do that. If you haven't participated in the Graduate Realtor Institute, GRI, we are encouraging all of our new agents as they come through the door to take this. This is a great foundation for them to be successful. I know there's people out there that's probably been in the business for 10 years that don't have this designation. The designation now is, it used to be 8 classes, now it's 10. And when you finish this, you will have a designation in GRI, a certification with military relocation professional, and at home with diversity certification. So you're getting a lot more now when you complete the GRI designation. The GRI designation also, guys, for anyone that's interested in getting their broker's license, the broker's license has 4 modules of 45 hours each. This can be used as one of those modules. So it does help you as you go forward with other designations and other just professional development. So our first class that's coming up for the new year is going to be the business planning class. It's 503. It's going to be held on January 30th. If you don't usually do a business plan, I encourage you to take this class. Michael is very good about, just keeping us in line on what we should be doing at the beginning of the year. So it's really great. And we held ABR twice in 2024. Which is the accredited buyer's representative. Now we're going to hold the seller's representative. This is going to be held on March 6th and March 7th. It's a Thursday and a Friday. So if you've taken the ABR and you want to now take something about the sellers, here's your opportunity. Again, it is a 2-day. It's just like the ABR 2-day. You'll get credit for it. You won't get the same type of credit that you got with your ABR. The ABR gave you all 16 hours, but remember, things have changed with our credits, so you won't get the same thing with that. And then the last thing, just remember that we do have a DEI library. It's in the store. So if you're in there browsing, there's books in there that you could take to just be more aware of the diversity, equity, and inclusion. So thank you guys. I appreciate your time. And if you have any questions about education, please feel free to give me a call, send me an email. I'm happy to help you with anything. And it's Friday, so I can say happy Friday. You guys have a successful weekend. Whatever you do, if you're out showing houses, I hope you sell them. And just good luck to you. And hopefully we'll see you next week sometime. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Teresa.
Thank you.
Bye,
You're
thank
welcome.
you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.